First, having read the book of myths and loaded the camera, I checked the edge of the knife blade I put on, the body armor of black rubber, the absurd flippers, the grave and awkward mask. I'm having to do this, not like Castillo and his assiduous team aboard this sun-flooded schooner, but here, alone. There is a ladder. The ladder is always there, hanging innocently, close to the side of the schooner. We know what it is used for, we who have used it. Otherwise, it is a piece of maritime floss, some sun-dry equipment. I go down, rung after rung, and still, the oxygen immerses me. The blue light, the clear atoms of our human air. I go down. My flippers. I crawl like an insect down the ladder, and there is no one to tell me when the ocean will begin. First, the air is blue, and then it is bluer, and then green, and then black. I am blacking out, and yet my mask is powerful. It pumps my blood with power. The sea is another story. The sea is not a question of power. I have to learn alone. Turn my body without force in the deep element. And now it's easy to forget what I came for, among so many who have always lived here, swaying their crinoletted fans between the reefs, and besides, you breathe differently down here. I came to explore the wreck. The words are purposes, the words are maps. I came to see the damage that was done and the treasures that prevail. I stroked the beam of my lamp, and slowly along the flank of something more permanent than fish or weed. The thing that I came for, the wreck, and not the story of the wreck. The thing itself, and not the myth. The drowned face, always staring toward the sun.
The evidence of damage worn by the salt and sway into this threadbare beauty. The ribs of the disaster, curving their assertion among the tentative haunters. This is the place. I am here. The mermaid whose dark hair streams black. The merman in his armored body. We circle silently about the wreck. We dive into the hold. I am she. I am he. Whose drowned face sleeps with open eyes. Whose breasts still bear the stress. Whose silver, copper, vermeil cargo lies obscurely inside barrels, half wedged and left to rot. We are the half-destroyed instruments that once held to a course. The water-eaten log, the fouled compass. We are, I am, you are, by cowardice or courage, the one who find our way back to this scene, carrying a knife, a camera, a book of myths, in which our names do not appear.
Hi! So, for the analysis for the Diving into the Wreck by Adrienne Rich poem, I have used the Wendler analysis method, but that will be in the next couple of slides. But for right now, in the original poem, I have outlined different parts that I find very beneficial and very effective in the poem, and very significant parts. So, in the right, I put that the star, where in lines that I had starred, that was a place of exigence or purpose. And where I have underlined pink or bracketed pink, that shows analogies and different repetition comparisons. And then in the other brackets, it's the items that have helped the author find the place that she's looking for, which is the main premise of the story, as we'll get into. And then the squiggly underline is for the comparison and the feeling of the author. So this is the first page of my Diving into the Wreck Wendler analysis. And in the Wendler analysis, you start with the meaning and you break it up into stanzas by small summaries. So In the first stanza, lines 1 through 12, the author is aboard a deep-sea exploration, talking about the equipment that she's using, the feeling of lonesome, and how this is very different compared to what a man would be feeling. And in the second stanza, lines 13 through 21, she expresses the latter, what will lead her down to her aspiration that she's been talking about, this deep-sea wreck. She says that many will not pay attention to the latter and will pass by it and not pay attention, but to her, the latter symbolizes a lot more. In the third stanza, lines 22 through 33, the author begins her descent promptly. She feels very alone in the journey as she's going down, and she feels as if this is an act that's taking a long time and that it's never going to end, and nobody's there to guide her. So in lines 34 through 43, the fourth stanza, she is now in the water, and she is taking in her new surroundings. She had never been in an environment like this, and she's really soaking it all in. And she thinks she's blacking out as she's descending towards the deeper levels of the ocean, but really she's just about to see this tragedy that's more than just the wreck that she's been describing. And in the fifth stanza, which is lines 44 through 51, she feels a wave of confidence and knowledge, and she sees how this other society and this other world functions that she hasn't gotten to experience before. And then in lines 52 through 60, which is stanza 6, my apologies, she comes into reality and she's gaining this new knowledge about the woman that she is and the women that she came for. So this is where the metaphor comes in, and we're going to get into that in the next couple slides. But in the next stanza, lines 61 through 70, she knows the thing that she came for is real, and it's not just a story. The wreck is beautiful, even when it's depicted as a disaster. And in the eighth stanza, lines 71 through 77, the author expresses a circling around this wreck with a merman figure, and she would be the mermaid. But the more that you look at it, she's circling with herself as she starts to take on this battle of who her identity really is. And in the next stanza, lines 78 through 86, she is looking deeply into the lives lost on the ship and what those lives are representing. There's a large amount that was lost, not just lives, but items and hope as well. And to wrap up in lines 87 through 94, this journey is exactly what she needed. She references reality once again in the Book of Myths, and saying that women and others have been written out of history intentionally. And so for the second part of the Wendler method, it's the antecedent scenario. And Rich, the author of this poem, was driven by her frustration with the inequality between men, women, identity. And she really wanted to write this poem to let those feelings out that she had been struggling with, but also to represent the other women and people in history that haven't been well represented. She wanted to honor many of the people that have been ignored, not just herself. And then for the third part, it's the division into structural parts. And the author has divided this poem into 11 stanzas, varying by specific action. It's going chronologically. So she starts on the boat, and then she takes you through the steps of her descent. Different emotions are evoked in each. There is no rhyme scheme, but continuous anaphora throughout each stanza. There's lots of repetition, and all of that is all related back to each other. The poem is arranged by verse and not by word count, and there's no specific structural parts, but that's due to the effortless flow of the stanzas and how she is going chronologically. This poem is full of emotion, but in lines 71 through 77, where she says, "This is the place, I am here, the mermaid whose dark hair streams black, the merman in his armored body, we circle silently around the wreck. We dive into the hold. I am she, I am he." And here we see a sense of disappointment and of realization of why she feels that men have done this to women in the past and why she still continues to feel that way. We see a new wave of confidence in this as well. She's kind of understanding her own and not hiding behind this shell anymore. And in the fifth part, figurative language, there are many anaphoras, like I said before, throughout the poem. In line 34 through 36, first the air is blue, then it is bluer, then it's green, and then it's black. And I'm blacking out. And the repetition sparks a sense of imagery for the reader. And also in lines 1 and 92, which is continuously referenced, there is a metaphor, which is, first having read the Book of Myths, this book is what she continues to reference, and it is a reference for a symbol for women's rights and the history of societal norms. And the sixth part is the skeleton. And in this poem, the tones of the first three stanzas are frustration, insecurity, curiosity. And then once you get to the fourth stanza, the next four are filled with more confidence and ambition and living out this dream that she's been wanting to produce. And lastly, the final three stanzas consist of feminine rage, realization, and accusation. For the seventh part of the Wendler analysis strategy, games that the poet plays with the skeleton. This does not follow a typical bell curve pattern, and this is done so intentionally. The lengths of each stanza vary between where the author is, where her location is, and where she is mentally. In the third stanza, 12 lines show that the author is where she's going, what she's doing, and then in the final stanza, the 8 lines comprise a very concise but direct feeling that she is feeling. It's anger combined with realization. The 8th part is agency, and in the lines 1 through 70, there is only the pronoun use of I or me representing the author and how she's feeling, since this is a first-hand account. But once we get to line 73, we see the first use of we, and that's we circle silently, the introduction of talking directly at the male that she encounters, really directing the whole male species. And in line 77, I am she, I am he. And this is allowing us to infer how she's feeling with her own identity and why she's feeling this way, genderly. And in line 87, she says, we are, I am, you are. The author holds herself accountable to any of these emotions towards the end and these poor treatment, but also the audience and the readers, that this isn't just a one-person thing. And then for the ninth, it's tone. And the tone of this poem shifts slightly, but it still keeps this overall frustration and jealousy that she's had pent up for all of these years. And in line 12, she says, I'm having to do this here alone. And that continues throughout the poem. She feels very alone in this, as a man would not. As she feels consistently not supported, this is where the Book of Myths comes in again, which is this metaphor for history and how women, people of color, people of different identities, have been written out of history intentionally and being shadowed by this male. And this is the more aggressive tone that formally addresses why she's so upset and very direct. In the 10th, Roads Not Taken. The author did a really good job of expressing herself and exactly how she felt for women's rights, historical rights, and cultural rights. The only thing that I wish that she would have delved on a little more was how her gender identity impacted this, and it gives a reader an idea of where she stands on her own gender identity, because when she mentions I am she, I am he, that is sometimes alluding to the fact that she is confused about her own gender identity. So if she put in more explanation of what that really meant, or another metaphor relating to that, I feel like that would have summed it up nicely, expanding the exact people that she's fighting for. And for the last 11th, the imagination. This poem was very unique in the way that the author used giant metaphors as shipwrecks, ladders, boats, the ocean, and the book to encapsulate exactly her disagreement with previous oppression of all of history, and specifically from males. I was able to learn from all of this content that she shared and how other women felt on this subject, and that many people are not alone in how they feel. I'm able to relate to her as I am also a female and as I have witnessed oppression of other cultures and other people for years. So this poem was overall an amazing poem and a great way to express female rage and female representation.